Hey, this is Sarah from Precision Camera in Austin, Texas.
And I'm Jimmy with Sony.
And we're out here on the beautiful UT campus with the new A6300. We're gonna give it a test. So, tell me a few things about the camera.
So one of the nice features about this camera is the autofocus system. It uses a hybrid autofocus system that incorporates phase detection and contrast detection. It's got 425 autofocus points in the phase detect, and to pinpoint your autofocus, it has 169 contrast. So for subject tracking, continuous autofocus, it does a really good job.
Fancy. So we're gonna shoot some 4K footage, we're gonna shoot some slow-mo, and we're gonna do some stills all over campus and see how good it actually is.
All right guys, today I've got parkour athletes Johnny Roberts, Josh Grant, and Donald Brooks. They're gonna assist us with the autofocus testing with our A6300. So the A6300 has a 24.2 megapixel CMOS sensor. It's a crop sensor, APS-C, and it's unique because it uses copper wiring instead of aluminum wiring. The copper wiring is much thinner, which gives us more surface space for the photodiode to get more light, and it's a lot thinner to have better light efficiency in low light. Kung Fu poses, Kung Fu photography.
So you're probably gonna see some clips in this video where I'm shooting with the 16-50. I did have that on originally. That comes in a kit with this camera. I think the 18-105 is a much better match. If you're gonna utilize the video capabilities and the autofocus capabilities, 16-50's stabilizer and speed just doesn't really match up. This is a much better option. I would give this one. So I have my autofocus tracking sensitivity set to high as well as the speed set to high, and I have it on face detect to see how quickly it can hop from person to person. And it's really good. It's really impressive. There's a lot happening, and the second it sees a face, it just hops to it. So one of the big things I keep seeing on this camera is the 4D autofocus. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so our 4D autofocus system is something that we started off with on the Alpha 77 Mark II, and we also put it in our A6000. The 4D autofocus system refers to 4 dimensions. We've got our X, Y, and Z coordinates that we're doing predictive autofocus on, but then we're also considering time as our 4th dimension. By being able to determine all those predictive autofocus points, it helps us determine for fast tracking for our subject as we're doing continuous autofocus.
Cool. So, huge thing on this guy is the autofocus system, of course, and it has 425 phase detection points, and that covers most of the sensor, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Pretty close. So with all those phase detect autofocus points, we are covering approximately 84% of the image sensor. So we're getting a lot of area coverage for the autofocus for subject tracking, continuous autofocus, or when we're doing what we have now with this new system is high density tracking, where we're able to pinpoint into a certain section of your autofocus area while tracking a subject and pinpoint the autofocus and keep track of your subject as they're moving through the frame.
Cool. One of the things I wanted to point out that I love about this, because you can do it on the A7Rii Mark II as well, is the eye focus, or the IAF, I think is what it's called, where it pinpoints. I think that is just so cool.
Yeah,
it's nuts to watch.
Really cool feature about this camera with the autofocus system is that we're able to autofocus on the eyeball and in single mode or in continuous. So if you're doing any portrait sessions and you want to maintain the focus on the eyeball, you can put into AFC, which is our autofocus continuous, and keep the focus locked into the eyeball as you're doing your portraits and taking shots. That way you can make sure that each shot is going to be in focus on the eye.
That's awesome. And tell me about the EVF, because I heard it has better resolution than the previous model, right?
So what we've done is we've increased the resolution in the electronic viewfinder. We went to an XVGA, which is a 2.36 million dot electronic viewfinder. So we're getting much better sharpness and realization while shooting through the electronic viewfinder.
Cool. I was gonna say, it's super bright and very, very sharp, very accurate.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So Big thing on the A6000 when it came out, of course, was its speed and its autofocus capabilities. And this guy is supposed to kind of blow that out of the water.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we were able to push with this camera, of course, is the autofocus speed, just like the A6000. We're now able to achieve autofocus within 0.05 seconds, 0.01 second faster than the A6000.
Hey, anything.
And so it can lock in autofocus very, very quickly. Of course, we still have the 11 frames per second continuous shooting with continuous autofocus and exposure, but we also highlighted a new feature on this where we can do 0 blackout at 8 frames per second.
So what does that mean?
What that means is when we're doing our subject tracking and kind of the sports environment for autofocus and continuous shooting, the 8 frames per second will allow us to shoot without any blackout. So we're able to see our motion capture as we're panning and moving with our subject.
So basically there's no lag or interruption in the viewfinder.
Right. So you can continuously watch your motion and your subject as you track it without any blackout. It's really easy to lose them in focus, but also lose them when they're further out with the zoom lens. So being able to realize that and watch them as you're shooting is pretty amazing.
Cool. So there's quite a few changes on this camera from the A6000.
Right.
The first thing I noticed when I picked up is that it's the same material that I think the A7 Mark II series is made out of. It's more of the matte plastic. It feels a little bit better too. This guy's fully weather sealed, which the A6000 was not. So just how weather sealed is it?
So what we've done with the camera and body is we reinforced it with magnesium alloy, and we provided all the dust and moisture resistance in the important areas of the camera to keep it weather sealed.
Which is nice, because A6000 didn't have really much of that at all, comparatively, right?
Comparatively, correct, yes.
Cool. Another big ergonomic thing I noticed, or something externally that I noticed right away, is we finally have a microphone port, which is huge. This was kind of a complaint on previous models, because if you wanted to record video, you were forced to go to an external recorder. So how's the audio capability?
So with the audio, of course, any of our alpha cameras are giving you the capability to record linear PCM 14-bit audio. So you're getting really nice sound quality out of the internal microphones, and of course the ability to control the gain and attenuation. But now with the Alpha A6300, we're able to realize the capability to plug in an external microphone to the camera. That way we can get better audio capture during our video.
And that's a better capability than I think we find in a lot of competitor DSLRs and even other mirrorless cameras on the market. I mean, these guys sound pretty good. Linear PCM is found in a lot of external recorders as well.
Right.
So it's pretty impressive. And of course, huge thing on this camera is the fact that it does UHD 4K internal without going to a recorder.
Yep.
Full pixel readout, no pixel binning, S-Log2, S-Log3, color profiles. Those are what we find in like the full frame models, the A7R Mark II, the A7S Mark II. What else can you tell me about the video?
So what's really unique about the camera, of course, is that we can do 4K video on a APS-C sensor. What's great about this 4K video is that we're sampling essentially 6K, 20 megapixels. And like you said, it's a full pixel readout with no pixel binning. So we're getting very nice oversampling of the resolution that we're processing into 4K resolution. And that's all internal, so you can record that to an SD card.
Cool. What's the bit rate on that internal?
We have a couple bit rates to choose from. Of course, you have a 24 frame and 30 frames, and with either one of those, you can choose a 60 or 100 megabits per second.
Cool. And this guy also does slow-mo in 1080. You can do 120 frames per second.
Correct. You have the ability to do 120 frames per second at full HD, and you also have high frame rate recording, where it does the 120 frames per second recording, but can output that into your rendered file internally to a 24 frame timeline or a 30 frame timeline.
Cool. Is that similar to what we find in like the RX10 Mark II, or
Yes.
is it? Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So
Same feature.
RX100 Mark IV users and RX10 Mark II users would be familiar with that.
Yes. The A6300 packs a mean punch. With its fast autofocus system and internal 4K video, it's definitely a camera to consider.
So thank you guys so much for being awesome athletes and helping us film our A6300 video.
Hold on a second. Back tuck check.